The following Pharma Essentia podcast is intended for informational and educational purposes only and cannot be considered as medical advice. Please speak to a healthcare professional before making any treatment decisions.
Hey, Josh.
Hey, Kay.
And as always, hello, listeners.
And welcome back to the PV Pod Stories from the Marrow,
a podcast about Polycythemia Vera.
Brought to you by Pharma Essentia.
Hey, thanks, Pharma Essentia. Josh, today I am so excited to introduce to you my favorite person living in Nashville, Tennessee.
Oh my gosh, we booked Dolly Parton? Hold on, I gotta call my mom.
No.
Yeah, she's probably super busy or something, and she works a lot, 9 to 5 at least.
Dolly lives in Brentwood, Tennessee.
So not Nashville?
Common mistake.
Wait, so who is your favorite person in Nashville then?
I'm Tracy Rode. I'm Chief Executive Officer of the Patient Empowerment Network, which I've been fortunate to serve for 3 years.
Tracy and I actually had the chance to meet a few weeks ago at the PV in Focus event in Pasadena. She is terrific fun, and I so enjoyed listening to her speak at the PV in Focus event, and I'm very excited to get to introduce her to you and to our listeners.
Fantastic. Let's get right into it then. Tell me a little bit more about Tracy.
I am a 15-year cancer survivor myself, and I live with cancer as a chronic disease. So while I don't have PV, I do understand a lot of the things that you all are going through in your journey. I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and am very happy to be speaking with you today.
So Tracy doesn't have PV herself, nor is she a doctor or a caregiver.
But she's a cancer survivor. Her cancer is chronic, much like PV. And most importantly for today's episode, she's a patient advocacy superstar.
So it looks like Dolly isn't the only superstar in Nashville.
Still thinking about Dolly, huh?
Kay, I'm always thinking about Dolly, but I'm so excited to hear from Tracy, especially about the Patient Empowerment Network. I mean, that sounds like a fantastic resource for our listeners to know about.
But Josh, there's no rush.
You're right. Sorry, you just really sold me on Tracy.
First, I'd like to share with you guys how Tracy defined self-advocacy. She's got a unique perspective, and I think you're gonna like it.
I was already sold, Kay. Let's hear it.
I think self-advocacy can be as simple as thinking of yourself as a survivor from the day you're diagnosed. Someone told me that a couple of years before I was actually diagnosed with cancer myself. And so October 1st, 2010, from that day forward, I said, I'm a survivor. And it was very empowering, especially since I've never been cancer-free and never will be. It's a very empowering thing. So when I call myself a survivor, I'm advocating for myself in my journey.
Oh, I love that.
Knew you would.
I can see how this frame of mind would be so empowering, especially for our friends living with PV, a cancer that unfortunately does not have a cure yet. Just because you aren't quote-unquote cancer-free doesn't mean you aren't a cancer survivor. You're surviving cancer every day.
I agree 100%. So that was just a taste of Tracy's expertise. We are going to be hearing more from her right after this quick break.
So you're learning about PV on the PV Pod, Stories from the Marrow.
Now get ready to take the next steps on your PV journey with Piece Together PV. Previously, What's Next PV, an educational site on everything Polycythemia Vera. Though the name has changed, the mission remains the same: to empower people with PV to learn about their options, speak up, and make informed long-term decisions. Piece Together PV can help you understand test results, set health goals, and make a plan to advocate for yourself. Check out piecetogetherpv.com to learn more. And we're back.
Here we come again.
Was that a Dolly Parton reference?
We opened up the floodgates, Kay.
No, I'm pretty sure you brought up Dolly.
Let's not get into semantics. I want to hear from Tracy about self-advocacy.
So right before the break, Tracy shared with us that great anecdote about considering yourself a cancer survivor from the day of diagnosis as a form of empowerment. Here's what else she had to say about defining self-advocacy.
So, more specifically, beyond just that mindset that you have, self advocacy is first and foremost knowing that while cancer very often feels like something that's being done to you, your journey with cancer treatment and survivorship will be better and make you feel more empowered if you embrace the idea that you have a role. You have a role in decision making. You have a role in taking actions that can improve your outcomes. And yes, attitude is a very important thing.
Oh, I really like that. You as a person living with PV have agency in your situation. So many things can feel out of control when you receive a diagnosis like PV, but so many things are within your control as well.
And there are ways to increase that agency and sense of control. Here's what Tracy suggests.
So, knowing your options for treatment, whether it is through a question and answer session with your medical team or through some research through trusted, scientifically valid websites, or interacting with other survivors. That's an important part of self-advocacy as well. It's just educating yourself so that you feel more on a level playing field. You know, we all walk into the oncologist's office for that first visit feeling like, am I going to understand the words they're using? Especially with PV, you may have never heard of it before, so you're trying to understand the sort of the lingo that comes with a PV diagnosis. And just the thought that you come in, that you can understand, you can learn to communicate with your physician. You're never going to trick anyone into thinking that you're a hematologist, but you absolutely can have the very important role that patients who get the best care have in making decisions about that care.
Educating yourself about your diagnosis helps you get the best care you possibly can. I love that advice. It reminds me of a few of our previous guests, like Susan Brooks, who was initially considered high risk and offered a treatment plan that didn't really align with her goals. She sought a second opinion and was successful in adjusting her treatment plan based on her own research.
Navigating esoteric lingo is definitely a big barrier to entry in regards to understanding your diagnosis and communicating with your doctors. Familiarizing yourself with the terms goes a long way in demystifying those conversations.
We have some great PV 101 and term-defining episodes in Season 1. If you haven't listened, I highly recommend it, and not just for the charming hosts.
But the terms can be a lot to take in if you were just recently diagnosed. Just getting a cancer diagnosis at all can be extremely overwhelming.
Oh yeah! Does Tracy have advice for someone who was just diagnosed and doesn't know where to start?
For someone who's just been diagnosed and really trying to educate yourself about PV, just know that you're probably going to get inundated with ads and suggestions and AI, all kinds of inputs of information. But the most important thing for you to realize is not every resource on the internet is credible. Not everyone is science-based. One of the wonderful things about all the treatments that we experience as cancer patients is they have been rigorously tested through years and years and years. And once those medications and treatments are approved, they continue to be rigorously tested. So science has been top of mind in getting you diagnosed and getting a treatment for you, and you have to keep science top of mind when you are seeking information. So looking for information at PV-specific organizations. The companies that make PV drugs usually have great information. Organizations like the Patient Empowerment Network, while we cover many different types of cancer, we do have some specific information about myeloprolific neoplasms, which is another word you all got to learn after your diagnosis, because PV is one of those.
We love a credible, science-based internet resource. The amount of information available to us at any given moment is insane, to say the least. But not all information is created equal. Making sure your resources are credible is a great way to sift through all that stuff you find online about PV.
We've also heard from previous guests about how beneficial it is to be a part of patient communities. And the internet is a great place to get started in finding those communities. For example, you can go to pvinfocus.com to sign up to receive information on upcoming in-person PV in Focus events, which will be taking place all across the country in 2026.
So, say I was diagnosed with PV. I'm getting informed, I'm connecting with other people living with PV, I'm vetting my information, the whole 9 yards. I'm really self-advocating.
I'd say you're doing great.
I have a guess, but I just want to ask Tracy, why is this so important? Why is it so important to advocate for yourself, to empower yourself, and to educate yourself?
When you have a rare cancer like PV, which many people may not have heard of, including some medical professionals, it's very important for you to feel confident that you can advocate for your care. So I'm sure many of you have experienced going into an urgent care clinic because you have a cold, and then there's not a checkbox for I have PV. So knowing that you need to disclose that information so that you'll get the best care that doesn't interact with anything that you're doing for your cancer in any way, that's an important part of self-advocacy. So the awareness, the education that you have about your disease, and also just a little bit of sticking up for yourself to make sure that your condition is known when it needs to be, and that you give yourself the respect of expecting others to look at your condition as something important that's a factor in your care, your relationships, your just total experience.
By making yourself an authority on your diagnosis and on your treatment expectations, you can really advocate for yourself in getting treatment that works for you.
I love how Tracy phrased it. You give yourself the respect you deserve.
And then you expect that respect in return when you start having conversations with your healthcare team about your treatment plan.
In rare disease, we hear stories all the time about how sometimes your treatment goals aren't aligned with your physician. Especially if you're doing this research, you might come across something that you want to try or that sounds more fitting with your goals, but it's not what your physician initially suggested. Does Tracy have any advice there?
We all are incredibly fortunate when we find a team of medical professionals to walk with us on our cancer journey that we really see eye to eye. Not everyone has that experience at the beginning. Some people don't have that experience as they move into treatment. What I want you to know is that you have the right to expect care that's going to make you feel comfortable and confident and feel like your opinion is respected.
Repetition for emphasis. You have the right to expect care that makes you feel comfortable, confident, and respected.
So sometimes that can happen with a conversation between your medical professional and you. Sometimes that's a conversation between a nurse or a physician's assistant and you to just get some advice about ways to communicate with your medical team. We really put a lot of responsibility on oncologists to be miracle workers in a lot of ways, and a lot of them take that on when they study cancer medicine in medical school. But they're like the rest of us. They don't always know how to communicate. They're human. So finding a way to talk with them about your concerns, that your treatment goals may not be completely aligned, or finding a way to get a second opinion and maybe change your care. For a cancer like PV, where you may not have a specialist in your community, you have the right to be heard, and you have the right as honestly a customer of healthcare. So I would encourage you to approach those conversations with flexibility and with the assumption that you're going to reach consensus and that you're going to be heard with respect. And if you're not, then that's when you start looking at opportunities to maybe transition to a different situation. And there are lots of evidence-based resources online for the best way to do that.
I really like the point that Tracy makes towards the end there. You have the right to seek a treatment plan that fits into your lifestyle.
Expect respect and shared decision-making. And if you don't get it, you can always get a second opinion to find a healthcare team that better aligns with your needs.
I will say those doctor's appointments can be really intimidating. Does Tracy have any advice for making the most out of your appointment?
Especially when you're first diagnosed, I think you walk into the doctor's office and everything comes out sounding like Charlie Brown's teacher on the old cartoons. Wah, 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 wah. Because it's not easy to hear the words, "you have cancer."
Oh my God, she's so right.
Yep, we got it. Thank you, Josh.
Hopefully you have someone with you, even if it's not the person who's going to be in charge of helping you get to appointments, maybe helping you with day-to-day issues that you may not feel well after treatment and need a little help bringing groceries in or something like that. But having someone who can go with you and sort of be a note taker. Most medical professionals are elated for you to either take notes on your phone or record them or even FaceTime someone who lives in another state but needs to be intimately aware of what your care is going to be. It is in everyone's best interest when the patient and their core care team are really informed. So that's another form of self-advocacy, is to know what's going to work best for you. Is it going to be a recording? Is it going to be FaceTiming someone? Is it going to be having your spouse and your children there with you to hear? Do you have a friend who's just the one who can write down every word anyone says? Just to make sure that you take advantage of technology or just companionship of someone to have another pair of ears. Because I guarantee you, especially that first appointment, you're going to walk out and say, I have no idea what I just heard.
So just to summarize, Tracy recommends that you or a loved one records your appointments because even though your doctor sounds like Charlie Brown's teacher in the moment, you'll be able to review what they've said later when you're less overwhelmed.
It's also great to have a loved one with you so that they can be as informed as possible. That'll help them support you as a person living with PV the best that they can.
Here's some more great advice from Tracy regarding making the most of your doctor's appointments.
Our organization and many others have kind of little preparation questionnaires, 10 points to know before you go to your first appointment or ongoing appointments. One of the most important things that PV patients share is that often a symptom that they would never expect to have anything to do with either the disease or a side effect of the treatment is something that they really need to have told the medical team. So nothing's too small. Is it a cold sore or is it a side effect of treatment? Let your medical team figure that out.
Don't discount your symptoms. Better to run them by your doctor just in case, even if they end up being unrelated.
So just really being prepared for your appointment by, thinking about and maybe reviewing your notes from the last appointment so that you'll recall the things that you discussed at that time. Thinking about questions that you have for the medical professional and writing those down. You may not get all of them answered. We all know that everybody in the medical profession right now is short of time. People are getting, pushed, go, 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 see more people. So knowing what avenues you have to communicate those questions after the appointment, whether it's through a patient portal or through interaction with a nurse, a physician assistant, a nurse navigator, knowing what those other avenues are to get information. And just feeling comfortable after the appointment, after you review your notes, that you have an understanding of what you were told and what's expected of you. I had an appointment last week and I got a summary in my email probably 30 minutes later that I'm sure was generated by AI because I didn't see my nurse practitioner taking any notes. But it was fantastic because there were a couple of little things that, didn't necessarily get called into the pharmacy or, changed with my treatment plan, but things that I needed to know. So just looking back after the appointment with your care partner, your person who goes with you, and remembering that if you have questions or you have concerns, we're all human. Even that person who's taking great notes, know that you can reach back out and ask those questions or get clarification on issues where you don't have clarity.
Preparation is key. Prepping your questions before and reviewing your information after.
And if you can, have a care partner sort through that information with you along the way. There's a lot to sift through and a lot of questions to ask and a lot of things to remember. Notes and study buddies are your friend.
Does Tracy have any specific resources she might recommend to people living with PV?
There are so many resources for patients with PV, and the list is growing every day. From organizations like Blood Cancers United, which used to be known as the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, to a variety of myeloprolific neoplasm organizations that have more specific information. And there are a number of support groups and organizations that have PV specific information. American Cancer Society, Patient Empowerment Network, the Cancer Support Community, many of those have links on their websites to other resources for PV patients.
Those are some great options for science-based information, but Tracy doesn't stop there. You may also find yourself needing resources on how to handle changes in your lifestyle.
Also important, and obviously the most specific for PV-specific information. But for information about just navigating having cancer, how to talk to your children about cancer, how to get support with financial needs that you may have, because cancer is a little bit more expensive than you may have dreamed going in, right? And there are great organizations, that patient advocacy organizations that have resources for you for things like copay assistance with your utility payments in your community. So I would just encourage people to look at not only the specific sites for PV, but looking at cancer as a whole. Sometimes when you have a rare cancer like PV, it makes you feel like you're not a part of cancer advocacy because nobody knows what color your ribbon is. There's not a nail polish color that, proceeds go back to PV in October or whatever. It's just not as well known. So it sometimes makes you feel really isolated. But the community of cancer survivors is very inclusive, and the community of cancer advocates really wants to serve everyone equally.
Kay, this has been a fantastic episode.
We've really covered the self-advocacy basis.
So I'm wondering if Tracy has any last bits of advice before signing off. I just don't want to miss any of her insights.
The best tip that I can give you from my own journey and from that of the wonderful, amazing, inspiring PV patients and care partners that I've been fortunate to meet, is to know that you're not in your journey alone. And sometimes the event that makes you feel like you can really get through this, you can succeed in surviving PV and living with the disease, is just meeting someone else who's a little bit farther down the road, someone who was diagnosed a little bit earlier than you, or someone whose loved one has already experienced a year of treatment or something like that. We talk a lot about the patient experience, but the care partners watching this can absolutely tell you that it is very impactful on them as well. When someone that you love has a chronic cancer diagnosis and has the experience of the care continuum that you have with PV, it's just really empowering for me and many people to find others who have experienced the same condition. As an empowered patient, as a self-advocate, just go into the experience of cancer knowing that you have the ability, you have the right, and you even have the responsibility to advocate for yourself, because the best care comes when there is a balance of power between the medical professionals who are delivering the treatment and the patient who's receiving the treatment, with your care partner by your side, your co-survivor, your caregiver, whatever term feels authentic to you and your family and your friends to call that person. But just really embracing, just as we're going to embrace from day one that we're a survivor, we're going to embrace from day one that you are able to be a decision maker in your care. You are able to impact the outcome of your experience with cancer, and that it is valid for you to expect your medical team to assist you with making that happen.
Fantastic. I couldn't end an episode better myself, and I have tried.
Agreed. Thank you so much, Tracy, for your valuable advice and perspective on self-advocacy and empowerment while living with PV.
I'm convinced she's my favorite superstar in Nashville.
And thank you, listeners, as always, for tuning in.
This has been the PV Pod Stories from the Marrow,
a podcast about Polycythemia Vera.
We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye. The PV Pod Stories from the Marrow is produced by Believe Limited and Bloodstream Media, and made possible thanks to our sponsor, Pharma Essentia. The PV Pod is hosted by me, Kay Vermeil, and my co-host, Josh Bragg. If you like the show, please share it with anyone for whom it might make a difference, and leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We'll see you next time.